that they're changing my voice. I'm not like the whites and the Jews and the LGBT community who are controlling reproduction to a large degree at this point and to their extreme disgrace. God does not authorize them to do anything near that. In their own story in the Bible, the main groups, races, cultures, spirits that are adverse to God in the Bible are whites and Jews. Now you have to understand the distinction here. Christ as a character in the story is not born from a Jewish patriarchal line because they're being punished, right? And he says to them that the kingdom of heaven will be taken away from you and will be given to a people who will produce its fruit, right? At the end of the parable of the tenants, I believe it is. I used to always cite this. So when we see that they have gone the distance to sort of try to trap me. Now again, there's no really trapping me. You just trap yourself, right? You see that in Proverbs 1. Those who pursue ill-gotten gains fall into their own trap. It's the first thing about Proverbs. They don't know the first thing about life. The people are doing this to me. And they don't know the first thing about Proverbs. They're not wise people, right? Freemasons and all these people who think of themselves as quote-unquote enlightened. They're not smart. So as I've come to this location that I'm at, it's different than California. The demographics are different. And they try to leverage that. I knew by the way people were talking to me that they were going to try to take me out of my element, put me in a place where there's snow, and sort of try to tell me what to do. Now, I consider the most obvious thing in human history that Christ, which is me, will not budge. And I look at things in terms of logic. My religion is universal, pinpoint, and moral precision. Never in my life have I heard anybody argue that their religion is universal, pinpoint, and moral precision, okay, other than me. And on top of that, crazy people simply don't say that. They don't pinpoint things masterfully, and they don't have a sort of open mind. They don't think rationally. They don't make coherent arguments. And when their arguments are a little bit less coherent, they don't give a priceless and logical explanation as to why that is. So, as the kind of the team that they've assigned to me seems to have switched, though I don't know for sure because I don't see these people, they communicate to me in a way that is kind of stereotypical. It's like a typical psychological operation communication, right? When people run PSYOPs as military units, like in Venezuela, they don't say, hey, we're the ones doing it. They use more subtle means. And those means that are typical, according to the various Army manuals, for example, the Army manuals on unconventional warfare, psychological operation, anything like this, we see that that is being used here and it's clear. And on top of that, there's 23 witnesses to the psychological operation against me. So when we see that and we see that it is gang stalking, we see that when people claim that somebody is using, voice to skull or maybe synthetic telepathy, that it's believable because there's these technologies being used in this case and there's 23 witnesses on record. So for them to kind of go after somebody who's targeted at this point and say you're crazy is just them flat out lying and kidnapping them like they've kidnapped black people historically in the transatlantic slave trade. So when I look at this situation, I look at the military grade provocations taking place and I kind of judge the situation for other people, right? So I'm not a terrorist. I know what I'm going to do about things already, what have you. But when I judge other people's situation, I see that, they would be right to lash out. They would be right to fight with their oppressor and the people who have shared cultural values with their oppressor. And so we see the distinction between, say, the average person, maybe a little kid or maybe somebody who's a nice old lady, okay, and people who show aggressive traits, social controllers, right? Police officers, okay, wealthy oppressors, especially who are white, Jewish, and LGBT, not because of racism per se, but because of shared cultural values. And obviously I'm not racist, I'm mixed, what have you. I'm a moral supremacist and not a racial supremacist. For example, if you were in Nazi Germany and you broke out of the concentration camp and they're on your bumper and you're deciding what to do about it, right? Would you lash out at the first foreigner you see there who doesn't look really into it? Or would you go after the Nazi who is like a full-fledged, party member or an officer? And so it is with the person in the gang stalking program, right? That's how we kind of know how far gone they are. If they do lash out, are they going after, a rich white person, rich Jew, rich LGBT person? Are they going after a police officer? Are they going after a criminal gang stalker who's more kind of rough around the edges, more aggressive, more offensive? Okay, because these most people would consider fair targets using the Nazi German scale. Where in this situation we see people denying that that program exists. Okay, if you're the wise judge, you see someone has 23 witnesses on record to the program existing, and you see people denying that the program exists, that government denies. Now every member of that government, again, I'm not a terrorist, I don't have any plans to attack anybody, but every member of that government is a fair target. So more importantly than people die, I mean, there's 17,000 homicides a year in America, give or take. 100,000 people dying of drug overdoses while the government doesn't do anything. So life is cheap in America. That shouldn't be our main concern in terms of the targeted individual lashing out. Hell, they're not doing anything about all the gangs and the drugs and the corporations and all the rape and all the unprocessed rape kits and all the suicides that come as a result and all this stuff, all the injustice, at least of violence and suicide. So they don't care about human life, it's safe to say. And that's open and shut. If you work for the government and you didn't come to that conclusion, you should resign. If you didn't come to that conclusion a long time ago, you should resign, period. So what we should be concerned with is the corruption, not the victim lashing out. If some woman gets raped by a bunch of people and she kills two of them, okay, that's not so concerning. What is concerning is she got raped and everyone's playing stupid. That's concerning. That should be where our focus is. And anyone who doesn't have that focus is just illogical. Make your case or shut the fuck up.